Hey guys, Sean here. So Russia has finally invaded Ukraine. Putin has done it. He has pulled the trigger. So tanks and troops are rolling into Ukraine and things are really escalating. There are missiles being fired all the way to the capital Kiev, and Putin has really laid down the law, right? He has kind of told the world that if any other country interferes, there'll be an instant and devastating response. I really don't know what exactly that might be, but I think it's something very terrible and we all can probably guess what, right? But I think right now the whole world really isn't expecting this, and Biden really dropped the ball on this one. Gold broke past 1970 and silver 2550 before coming down after the sanctions were imposed. Bitcoin and the S&P 500 are extremely volatile, and if you look at the Russian stock index and their currency, it's more or less crashing down as well. So investors here are really quite worried that the war will continue for quite a while, right? It clearly shows that investor sentiment is moving away from risk to safety. We saw the classic flight to safe haven assets like gold and silver, but now the big question is what will happen next and how does it affect gold? What does it mean for gold, right? So, in this video, I really want to take a quick look at how gold prices could move down the road depending on if Putin continues to go full crazy, right? And this is why we need to take this seriously beyond just gold and silver as well. Let's dive in. Firstly, we need to understand why Russia is invading Ukraine, right? And I believe it's for the most dangerous reason of all. It's not because of greed or some noble cause to reunite with the Ukrainian brothers, it's because of fear. So Putin is most likely very afraid of the situation Russia is in. And if we really go back in time, right, after the Soviet Union fell, Russia had to recover while NATO, with the help of the USA, had the chance to keep expanding. So there's one clause in NATO that we really need to understand here, guys. And it's if any NATO country is attacked, it's considered an invasion of the entire NATO alliance, and the entire alliance will be forced to back up the country that's being attacked. And they have kind of reaffirmed this to Russia, and they are not kidding around, right? Now, I'm not defending Russia at all, but if you look from their perspective, they are truly getting surrounded, right? So the US has bases across the entire world and some very close to Russia, like in South Korea and Turkey. And if Ukraine joins NATO, Russia will be truly surrounded, NATO will be at its doorsteps, right? And if we look quickly at Russia's terrain, they kind of have no mountains, rivers, or deserts, making it hard to defend. So this is why Russia is probably choosing to invade today, right? They cannot risk Ukraine falling to NATO in the future. This isn't a petty war. It's essentially Russia trying to project into the future, and they are fighting for what they believe is their own survival as well. At least this is what probably Putin thinks. Now, apart from the human tragedy, I think we really need to pay attention to this war. It will affect how our investments play out. We already know inflation is at 7.5% and prices of almost everything is going up, even the bag of chips in the supermarket, right? We kind of expect the Fed to raise interest rates throughout this year to try and control inflation. But if this turns into a full blown war, right, something very, very nasty. And if the United States is somehow dragged into this even further, I think it will really unleash another wave of inflation and it could be much worse, right? I think the US is already halfway there. Biden has imposed sanctions and it's not impossible that this can escalate, right? Anything can happen today. I mean, you have just seen over the past 2 years, right? So the thing about war is that you really need to pay and feed soldiers, you'll need to manufacture weapons and missiles, and where do you think the money comes from? Gotta print them, right? That means you gotta issue bonds. And to minimize the debt of the bond so that your country doesn't totally collapse, what do you have to do? You have to lower interest rates again. So it's the whole QE stimulus game that we're all too familiar with, right? You get where am I going with this? And that is besides the other obvious factors like energy prices that will rise. After all, a war needs tons of oil to fuel planes, aircraft carriers, and tanks, right? To really fuel all the war machines. And the worst part, at least to me, is that all this printed money isn't invested into something productive for the future, right? It isn't really used to better our lives like green tech or anything like that. It is spent to blow up stuff that will never return. Now, gold has always been seen as a safe haven asset and it really shines when it comes to war. If we look at the price of gold during major conflicts, we can see surges and uptrends which die down after the conflict ends, right? And it's because people really become fearful and they sell off their stocks and risky assets and just pile into gold, right? That's why it hit a recent high of over $1970. People are looking for safety and not exactly for returns during this chaotic time. So you might be wondering, why is gold considered a safe haven asset, right? And that's because when it comes to war, countries involved will be printing money like crazy and devaluing their currency, right? That means other countries that are selling supplies don't really want their dollars or fiat for payment. They would rather accept gold. You know, it kind of happened during World War II when the British had to pay the United States gold for their war supplies. The Soviets also had to pay in gold to the US to buy supplies to fight the Nazis as well. That's really how the US built up, their huge stockpile of gold that really persists on today to become the world's reserve currency and have the power to actually peg the dollar to the gold. Now, another reason why gold is a safe haven asset is something that's very, very simple, right? And we need to think like a war refugee. Let's say your country gets invaded and you need to flee away. What can you take along quickly that is 100% provides you with sufficient value that you can barter your food with and really transport away your wealth, right? I don't think it will be a Robinhood stock trading account. It probably won't be your Bitcoin wallet. It will be gold, something physical that you can carry with you. And I think deep down in our psyche, we all know that. So the big question is, how far will Putin go? Will he stop at Luhansk and Donetsk, which are the separatist states in Ukraine recognized by Russia, right? I probably butchered those names, but these are the Ukraine rebel regions that are actually already friendly to Russia. Or will he go all the way to annex Ukraine? I think this is something very important, right? Because if he does stop at those two states, I think he might actually get away with it. I mean, countries will continue to sanction the hell out of Russia, but I don't think it'll be a full scale war. But if he continues to fight and go all the way, it could really escalate to a world war if NATO decides to intervene, right? And more or less, the United States will be dragged into it as well. And truth be told, either scenario can happen. I can't really see the future, right? I think Putin is full of surprises and trying to predict what he will do next is like trying to predict the stock market on any given day. You just won't know. But one thing is quite certain, gold will continue to rise if he decides to push on. So as gold and silver investors or stackers, what do we do? I think if you held on to gold or you bought some gold before the invasion, you would be sitting on some nice decent gains, right? And I think I mentioned before that gold normally flies up when you least expect it, and this is probably a very good example. I believe the inflation problem is already bad enough, and holding on to some gold has never been more clearer, right? At least in my own opinion. I don't think the Fed's hike rates can actually tame down inflation if full scale Armageddon happens. Now, if you are a speculator and besides gold, you can actually take a look at some missile and defense manufacturers like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin as well, right? Ever since the announcement of Russia's invasion, they have moved up quite a bit and should continue if war escalates. I know it's not something that I should really point out, but if you are the kind of person who wants to profit from war, there you are, right? So, will silver price go up as well? I think there's a good chance that it might, right? If the war continues to persist. A lot of defense tech today relies a lot on silver, and there have been a precedence in the past where the US Department actually borrowed 14,000 tons of silver to make the atom bomb back in World War II, right? That shows how important silver is to the war efforts. So there really could be a modern rush to silver for this war effort if we reach that point. So there you have it, guys. The world is slowly plunging into chaos, and we need to understand the role of how gold and silver comes into play during war. If you look at the doomsday clock, we have never been closer to midnight, which predicts the likelihood of a global apocalypse. And this Russian invasion really isn't helping the situation, right? I truly hope this war de escalates and Russia eventually backs down. But if war does break out and it spreads, I think it's another good reason to hold some gold. At that point, it may not be for gains or wealth protection, but literally for our survival. So let me know what you think. Do you believe Russia will back down, or do you think they'll go all the way? Do you think the United States will be dragged into this mess as well? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more gold and silver videos. Thank you guys for watching. Please be safe, and I'll see you soon.